Continuing on with Chapter 10, we have talked about the foreign currency. Sometimes, if you're doing multiple transactions, you need to hedge the risk that can potentially happen, as we saw in our example, just as a result of foreign currency fluctuations. So in problem 10.4, we see a number of these options. Now, there's a number of things going on here, so rather than work through the problem like I usually do, you'll see that I already have it set up and I'll talk you through it. Because even for me, doing this particular thing while I'm talking is hard because I have to really concentrate. So problem 10.4 is based on the concepts of hedging, and there's a great reference in your text on page 587 that tells you the 3 columns of hedging. Now the first column there with forecasted, that's purely betting. That's speculative and we're not doing that. That's not hedging against a risk. That's trying to make a profit. We're focused on the last 2. The commitment to transaction is what I have here in the green, and the hedge of a identified item is what we have in the yellow and the blue. The yellow is based on an option. The blue is based on a forward contract. So both options and forward contracts can be used as hedge, but in this case they're both based on an identifiable item. When you look at those 2 columns on page 587, and if you go through there and on the next page, you'll notice that they're very similar. Key into the ones that are different. Item 2, 9, 10, and 11 are the ones that are different between the 2 methods. So hopefully that will help you keep track of this. And keep in mind too the big picture, that the idea here is that you're trying to minimize or eliminate risk based on the fluctuation in currency. So our first item was on June 1st, they bought equipment. So the equipment is going to be valued based on the Canadian dollars times the spot rate at the date of transaction, just like our 2 transaction method. The inventory, like we said before, can't be changed. That value is fixed, but the account payable can potentially change based on mark to market. Then at that same date, they also bought an investment in an option, and that is just the $1,000 that they spent, nothing else there. But it represents a hedge, as I've put off to the side, to offset potential changes in that accounts payable. Then on June 1st, we also sold equipment. So you'll see the accounts receivable and sale here. Now they don't have a cost of sale here, which is a flaw in this problem, but obviously that's not the important issue here. The receivable is. So the receivable can potentially change with mark to market as well. And this particular transaction, we're hedging with a forward contract. Now notice that the forward contract is a memo entry only, and that kind of seems strange. We want to record something for the forward contract, but if you go in your text to page 559, down at the bottom, it explains to you why there is no initial entry for the forward contract, because it doesn't have a value per se at that date. We haven't done anything yet. So that's what happens on June 1st. Then on June 15th, we entered into a commitment to buy equipment. So this would be like the issuing a purchase order or signing a contract. In accounting terms, the transaction hasn't actually happened, so we don't record something. But for foreign currency, that commitment, if we hedge it, we can fix a price as of the commitment date. So we also entered to a forward contract there, and you'll see all of that information here in the green lines. That's what happens on June 15th. Then we come down to June 20th, and on June 20th, we reconditioned or added some amounts to the equipment. So again, we're going to take the cost in Canadian dollars and simply use the spot rate to value the transaction for reconditioning that inventory. We turned around then and sold the inventory. Again, you should be seeing now that transactions, other than if you have a committed transaction, transactions are going to be valued at the spot rate. So again, we take the sale amount in Canadian dollars of 310 times the spot rate to get our receivable and our sales amount. And then the cost of sales here is the combination of our prior 2 amounts for inventory. The amount we purchased it plus the reconditioned is how we get the total inventory and cost of sale. So that takes care of that one. And again, notice the accounts receivable is the one that is subject to potentially change. Now on June 30th then, we settle the one transaction, and we also do some adjustments to our hedging items. And you'll notice that I've put all the colors so that hopefully that will help you follow the different events here, because we've got different hedges and different transactions going on, and it can definitely get confusing just keeping those different ones straight. So on June 30th, we settled our receivable from the earlier sale, this one. So we're taking that receivable and we're settling it. So you see we take out the accounts receivable. The foreign currency that we actually collected that day is the Canadian dollars times the exchange rate. So the currency we're getting at that point in time is the transaction in dollars at the spot rate again. So based on just the two transaction method kind of issue, we'd have an exchange gain. Well, if you recall from up above here, we also had a forward contract hedging that. So we now close out that forward contract and just for a loss. So here they would have gained without the hedge, but the hedge said, okay, what if it goes the opposite way? So here the gain is reduced, but we still have a net gain, and they still had, a positive impact from this transaction. So the loss on the contract here is the changes you see from the contract rate that we had at June 1st of 0.729 and the spot rate on the day that we settled, and that creates the loss on the forward contract. And then to execute the forward contract, we go ahead and get the cash that we're entitled to and remit the foreign currency that we got from the customer. We turn around and give it to the party that we issued the forward contract with. And you'll notice then that the forward contract account is offset. It's like a temporary issue, and we have our loss there that offsets with the gain, and that transaction then is closed out. You'll notice also that the foreign currency account zeroes out and we're left with cash. So we sold, basically the equipment sale was $216. We ended up collecting cash of $218.7. So we actually got $2,700 more cash just based on the net impact of the gain and the loss of the actual translation of the currency with the hedge. So that takes care of that one. That entry is completely closed out. Now our option is not going to settle until 7/15, and that's beyond the scope of the problem, but the option actually increased in value. So again, we're going to mark that to market by increasing the option investment and increasing a gain. So, and you note off to the side, as I said, the final settlement of that one has not yet occurred. That leaves us then with our committed transaction that has not yet occurred. We haven't actually recorded the transaction, and we haven't yet taken delivery or made any payments, etc. But we've got this forward contract sitting out there. Well, that forward contract again has to be recognized, back to the page I referenced earlier, based on, we start to recognize it when the value changes. You'll notice that down below here we have a couple of calculations. The forward contract itself was for 400,000 Canadian dollars, and the rate right now for a 30-day contract 0.737, and we compare that to the rate when we took out the contract of 0.731, and we see that the change in the forward rate creates a $2,400 change. As you read in your text, that change has to be adjusted to present value. So I'm going to take that same 2,400, and in present value terms, it was 6%, that's the rate given in the problem, over 12 months. We've got one period here, and the change of 2,400 gives us the 2388 that we're actually going to record, because we record it at its present value or cash flow amount for that change in forward rate. So we create a loss on the commitment and create a firm commitment account. We create a forward contract and a gain, and that is all based on that commitment that hasn't yet transpired. So hopefully these will help you with your other Chapter 10 homework.